Welcome, welcome. I am so glad that you came today. Please have a seat. Oh, yes. How have you been? Good. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, I've been fine. Just busy with all the wonderful things that keep me happy around here. Like my beautiful home and my wonderful children. Yes, I'm very glad of it. I love my children more than anything. They bring me so much joy. The wonderful, wonderful imagination that they have. It just brings so much happiness to my heart. But my goodness, they can be quite a handful. You just caught me taking a break. I've taken all my jewelry off, trying to relax a little while they're taking naps. Thank you. I do love wearing them, but my goodness, just trying to take a moment for myself. And of course, I couldn't help but make myself some tea. Lovely tea while I look over a good book. Oh, I don't want to be rude. Would you like some? There we go. Yes. Of course, help yourself as much as you want. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Oh, you are so kind. And of course, here is some cream. I could never put too much cream in myself, but thank you. Oh, yes, it is a lovely teapot. I am absolutely in love with the beautiful bird detail. It is one gorgeous, wonderful teapot that I love. And of course, I've been reading while drinking my tea. Such a lovely experience. Tea and a good book. Oh, have you read this before? My mother used to read it to me. And now I read it to my little ones. They love it so much. Yes, they can't stop talking about Peter Pan and his wonderful adventures in Neverland. I myself used to love playing pretend after reading this book. Do you remember? Yes. A kiss. And such beautiful art. Oh, I love the art so much. And there we have the Neverland. And of course the Darlings. Such cute detail. I love the illustrations in this book. Oh, and here's some more. Isn't that beautiful? This is the first image. And here we have the nursery. And Tinkerbell. The darling children. And of course, we have Peter. He looks though mischief is coming in with the Tinkerbell, chasing after, I believe. And when was the last time you read through this book? I know it was quite a long time for me as well. But I can tell you it was a joy going back and reading it again. Since when I was little, I feel like I had forgotten or missed a lot. Even just flipping through the book and taking a look at all of the wonderful chapters and all of the beautiful images. So many very detailed, wonderful depictions of these incredible adventures. I can say I realized how much I missed it. All of these wondrous ideas. It's such a wonderful adventure. Some of the images are so interesting. We have the Darlings here. Of course, heartbroken over their children leaving, running off to Neverland. Poor things. Oh. Well, of course. If that's what you would like, I'd be more than happy to. Now, of course, you are not to judge, because the children are the only audience I ever read for, and I promise you, they are my toughest critics. Alright, here we go. Here we have our first chapter. Chapter 1. Peter breaks the room. All children, except one, grow up. They soon know that they will grow up. And the way Wendy knew was this. One day, when she was 2 years old, she was playing in the garden, and she plucked another flower and ran to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for Miss Darling put her hand to her heart and cried, "Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?" This was all that passed between them on the subject. But henceforth, Wendy knew that she must grow up. You always know after you are two. Two is the beginning of the end. Such silliness. It is beautiful, though. Of course, they lived at 14. And until Wendy came, her mother was the chief one. She was a lovely lady with a romantic mind and such a sweet, mocking mouth. Her romantic mind was like the tiny boxes, one within the other, that come from the puzzling East. However many you discover, there is always one more, and her sweet, mocking mouth had one kiss on it that Wendy could never get, though there it was, perfectly conspicuous in the right-hand corner. The way Mr. Darling won her was this. The many gentlemen who had been boys when she was a girl discovered simultaneously that they loved her. They all ran to her house to propose to her, except Mr. Darling, who took a cab and nipped in first. Quite funny. And so he got her. He got all of her, except the innermost box and the kiss. He never knew about the box, and in time he gave up trying for the kiss. Wendy thought Napoleon could have got it, but I can picture him trying, then going off in a passion, slamming the door. Mr. Darling used to boast to Wendy that her mother not only loved him, but respected him. He was one of those deep ones who know how stocks and shares work. You know, I have to say, as I've read this again, as an adult, I still find Mrs. Darling, of course, quite charming and quite the mystery woman. But I do have to say, the quite opposite effect has been done in my mind with Mr. Darling. He seems such a shrewd man, and to have such wonderful, imaginative children. Well, I guess they must all get it from their lovely mother. I quite like to imagine that I might be just as charming, perhaps. But of course, in a way that would have made any woman respect him. Mrs. Darling was married and white, and at first she kept the books perfectly, almost gleefully, and as if it were a game. Not so much as a Brussels sprout was missing. But by and by, whole cauliflowers dropped out, and instead of them, there were pictures of babies without faces. She drew them when she should have been totting up. They were Mrs. Darling's guesses. Wendy came first, then John, then Michael. For a week or two after Wendy came, it was doubtful whether they would be able to keep her, as she was another mouth to feed. Mr. Darling was frightfully proud of her, but he was very honorable, and he sat on the edge of Mrs. Darling's bed, holding her hand and calculating expenses, while she looked at him imploringly. She wanted to risk it, come what might, but that was not his way. His way was with a pencil and a piece of paper, and if she confused him with suggestions, he had to begin at the beginning again. Now, don't interrupt, he would beg her. I have £1.17 here, and 2 and 6 at the office. I can cut off my coffee at the office. That's 10 shillings, making 2, 9, 6. With your 18 and 3 makes 3, 9, 7. And with 7 not in my checkbook. Oh, could you imagine all this fuss? Counting dollars for children. It is quite a funny area of the book. Oh, let's skip on here. Oh, he goes on for quite a while, but here we are. And so on it went, and it added up differently each time. But at last, Wendy just got through with mumps reduced to 12/6, and the 2 kinds of measles treated as one. There was the same excitement over John, and Michael had even a narrower squeak. But both were kept, and soon you might have seen the 3 of them going in a row to Miss Folsom's kindergarten school, accompanied by their nurse. Oh, this is my favorite part. I love reading about their lovely nurse. Do you remember? Yes, of course. Mrs. Darling loved to have everything just so, and Mr. Darling had a passion for being exactly like his neighbors. So, of course, they had a nurse, as they were poor, owing to the amount of milk the children drank. This nurse was a prim Newfoundland dog called Nana, who had belonged to no one in particular until the Darlings engaged her. She had always thought children important, however, and the Darlings had become acquainted with her in Kensington Gardens, where she spent most of her spare time peeping into strollers, and was much hated by careless nursemaids, whom she followed to their homes and complained of to their mistresses. She proved to be quite a treasure of a nurse. How thorough she was at bath time, and up at any moment of the night if one of their charges made the slightest cry. Of course, her kennel was in the nursery. She had a genius for knowing when a cough is a thing to have no patience with, and when it needs stocking around your throat. She believed to her last day in old-fashioned remedies like rhubarb leaf, and made sounds of contempt over all this newfangled talk about germs. And so it was a lesson in propriety to see her escorting the children to their school, walking sedately by their side when they were well behaved, and putting them in the back so that they would go back in line if they strayed. Oh, adorable. Absolutely adorable. I love to read about Nana so much. Almost wish that I had a nurse like that for my children. And I often wished for one when I was younger. Let's see here. Okay. On John's footer days, she never forgot a sweater, and she usually carried an umbrella in her mouth in case of rain. There is room in the basement of Miss Folsom's school, where the nurses wait. They sat on forms while Nana lay on the floor. But that was the only difference. They affected to ignore her as of an inferior social status to themselves, and she despised their light talk. She resented visits to the nursery from Mrs. Darling's friends, but if they did come, she first whipped off Michael's pinafore and put him into the one with blue braiding, and smoothed out Wendy and made a dash at John's hair. We'll stop there for today. I know you look like you could watch me read it for the entire rest of the day. Well, I thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Oh, but of course, I think that's a wonderful idea, and I have been meaning to get a second copy. But, of course, for now, you are more than welcome to borrow it. I hope you and your little ones can have an absolute joy of a time reading it together. It will push me to buy that second copy. Oh, why, of such a beautiful day outside, too. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's quite a lot that I wear, but I love every piece of jewelry. It reminds me of the beautiful way that my mother used to dress. Actually, this year was my mother's. If you look at it closely, see how old it is, but it is still so beautiful. And it reminds me of her so. Well then, I think we're all ready to go. And you know what? I have the perfect thought. This will be a wonderful way to wake the children